Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see everybody. It's so nice to have people here. I know we're out there too, but it's really nice to see more and more people here. It's an energy that is really helpful for those of us up here. And you might notice that I have a wonderful partner here, and Jamana, who comes with me when we share the dais together frequently, but she had a very special family event that she really needed and wanted to be at, so Dabara joyfully said he'd stand in for her. So anyway, happy to have him here with me also. We just finished a lovely afternoon, or actually most of the day yesterday. We're doing some hiking groups, hiking together and with people. And anyway, it turned out, it was a smaller group than we had the other times, but it turned out to be a lovely time to just actually follow what pretty much a lot of what we do in our teachings. We were in the woods, just up in Lord Hill, which isn't that far away, and just walk in the woods, and to do it consciously, not all the time, of course, but off and on, and just to feel God's presence. It's so easy to feel God's presence, anyways for me, and I'm sure with many others too, in that natural environment. So anyway, I come a little tired, but other than that, because physically, there's a lot of ups and downs there on that particular trail that we did. So I just wanted to, this particular passage in the Bible is one that I think many of us have been familiar with, and I must admit I kind of misunderstood it for many years. And because I know for myself, I always kind of took Martha's side, Martha and Mary. She was at Jesus's feet and just soaking up the wonderful vibrations, when Martha was serving everyone, and she was trying to make everyone feel welcomed. And I was like, well, why couldn't Mary help her? That's important to serve. And we know on our path, service is something that we really need to do, not only serving in that kind of a capacity, but really looking at everything we do as serving God, no matter what it is. And yet, what I'm beginning to understand, and in my own life too, but that soaking up God's vibrations, such as at the feet of Jesus, which of course Jesus in person isn't what we can do right now, but with that model is really the most important thing we can do. When we can do it, we need to capitalize on it. Because tuning into God's consciousness is really how we're going to find our greatest happiness, which is realizing that we are God too, God consciousness. We have that in us. We have to realize that consciousness. And so this is one of the ways to do it, and that's this particular reading emphasize that. And I just wanted to go over it just one more time because it really has a power in it. Saying, the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. And again, I remember I misunderstood that. Well, no, of course we don't have Jesus with us always, he was back then and now we're here. But he wasn't talking about his body. He was talking, of course, about his consciousness. And what is the poor? Poverty. Talking about poverty he was talking about poverty in a spiritual sense, not obviously in the sense that we see in the material world. So these are, as he said, divine blessings are not common in this world. They are extraordinary. When they come, we should give them priority above every other consideration. And I know, just thinking of an example of that consciousness, of course, those of you who, everyone I think here knows, but Swami Ananda, the founder of Ananda, was a very high soul and a direct disciple of Yogananda. And he, towards the end of his life in particular, it became pretty obvious that he was a high soul. And I can remember particularly a time when I was living at Ananda village, and he was getting ready to move to Italy at that particular time. And we had this gathering in the community house because it was winter, and they have a large place to gather, and there were many of us there. And Swami had just finished writing a song called "Love is the Magician," and it's one of my favorite songs. It's very beautiful, and he got up to sing it for us, and none of us had heard it. I'm sure some had, but most of us hadn't heard the song. And he has a beautiful voice, and he got up to sing it, and he got through the first couple of stanzas there, and then he came to the part that says, "I can't breathe for love. All the stars above call to me, come home, life's waves all end in foam." And he got to that part, and you could just tell, it was like his breath was being taken away. He just could not verbalize it. He was so in spirit at that particular time, more so than ever. And all he could do was just stand there, and the tears of joy were flowing down his eyes. And what I also remember was that all of us, 200 of us or how many, were sitting in those seats there. It was like a pin could drop. There was such stillness. I mean, beyond just stillness of no noise, it was like the vibration of that whole room, of all of us, became almost motionless. Physically, mentally, you could feel that motion stop, or almost stop for us. For him, it was probably stopped. And it was just a very short, for us, not very long. And you could see Swami was gathering himself. And he did this a couple of times before he finished the song. And, it was the difference between, when he started and we went into that moment, it was like we were all swept up into that moment of higher consciousness. And it was something that, you can't forget those little glimpses like that. And I know I personally had an experience like that, and probably not, you can't judge them. For me, it was very special. And so I've got this little bauble here that I keep with me on my altar, and it's not the necklace, but it's the little crystal pendant that you see here on the end. It had a very significant story for me about this pendant, because back when we were starting East West Bookshop so many years ago, we had a budget, not very much, it wasn't enough, it was about half of what we really needed, but it's what we had. And we had found our place, what we wanted to open, which was down in the Roosevelt district. Perhaps some of you know where it was. But at the time, it was a new structure. They were just building it. It had been a gas station, and were just building it into these shops that people could rent. And so we had leased one of the spaces, and the whole thing was supposed to be done by September. So it was perfect for us. We'd open, prepare and make it ready. We'd be open by October, and then we would have Christmas season to really get on our feet. Well, things don't always work out the way they plan. So we know, so we were, getting things together, and I remember I had quite a bit of product in my house, and I was noticing when I did go down there that it didn't look like the building anything was happening. There were no workers around. And got a little antsy about it, and sometime in August or something, I talked to the owner, and by the way, the owner, give you a little story about the owner. He owned the Dante's Inferno tavern there in the University District. So you kind of get a feeling for, who he was. So anyway, evidently he hadn't paid the workers. He wasn't paying them. I guess he ran out of money or something. And he said, "Oh, no problems." He said, just a little glitch. He said, they'll be back at it real soon here. So, well, they weren't. October came by, nothing happened. November, and here we were missing the Christmas season. Here we were with all this product that we'd bought. You know, it was not very settling for me. I quit my job, and it's like, you know, come on, we want to get this thing for Christmas. Well, I remember in particular, I was sitting at my dining room table, and I was just worried. I was upset. You know how you get sometimes in those times. And I remember in particular, I was pricing this particular bauble here, this little crystal pendant, because we were going to be selling it, of course. And as I was doing this, it was like Divine Mother decided she'd give me a little help, because all of a sudden I just had this sense of this overwhelming joy, and I was alone. And it just like it poured into my heart, and everything just kind of expanded, and you know, all the troubles went away. And I remember I just cried for joy, and I was laughing, and I was playing with these things, and I thought, wow, this stuff is really fun. You know, I just really started to get into it. And it was just like black and white, just switched that consciousness. And it stayed with me for quite a long time. As I was doing that, as I went out for my walk and all that kind of stuff, it was a transformational moment, because I went from, you know, that state of being in delusion and, you know, doing it, and I began to realize so clearly I wasn't doing it at all. You know, I was just along for the ride, and God was just doing it through me and through the other people that we were working together. And I think it's that transitional experience that kept me on the path until now. And that was 38 years ago or something. It was a long time ago. You know, there are all sorts of times you can get pulled off when you're on your spiritual journey. But when you have those peak experiences, I call them, you know, you can't deny that there was that experience. It was so real. And, you know, of course, you keep hoping for it again. And little glimpses have certainly happened. But it was that cemented me that, yes, you know, I want that joy. You know, I know that's what it's all about. I mean, and that's what it is for all of us. You know, I was just so blessed to have had that experience. And I remember in doing the bookstore, and I fell because of it too, because when we go up, you know, devotees rise and devotees fall, right? And it doesn't mean you go way down into the pits, but you know, perhaps for most of us, we get these little, you know, ups and downs, these type thing. So with the bookstore, I was giving it to God because I totally felt I couldn't do it. I said, okay, God, this is yours, you know, and especially after that experience, I went, yeah, this is yours, yay, you know, it's not me. So then I also knew that, well, if it really succeeds, which it did, and if it really does well, which it was doing, then guess what? You didn't do it. So the ego didn't get to enjoy that particular win. Which is not usual in the human experience, of course. You know, the ego likes to get its rewards for all the work. So I remember it was after about 6 years managing the bookstore and watching, you know, the success. And I mean, I didn't do anything. You know, you just kind of played with things as they came and went, and ideas happened. And I mean, I really felt that. But at some point, after about 6 years, I remember I started to feel my ego kicking in. And it was kicking in. I began to feel, oh, I kind of like being the one that they all go to. And I kind of like the one making all these decisions and telling people what to do. And I mean, I could feel it happening. You know, it's almost like this thing in the head was getting bigger or something. It was strange. And you know, in the back of my mind, I was going, no, you know, God's a doer. But this was happening. My ego was happening. So God, I guess, decided, well, it's not going to work for you anymore. So right in the middle of 65th and Roosevelt, I was crossing over right in the middle. All of a sudden, I knew it was, okay, you're done. It came just like that. You're done. The bookstore is over for you, move on. You know, that kind of energy just filled me, and I was stunned. It was so strong, but it was real. It was real. They honked the horns, because here I was in the middle of the street, just standing there, like, just totally. So, you know, I could have pretended it didn't happen and not done anything about it, but nothing was the same after that. And I knew that that's true. I was done. And as much as I loved working at the store, I knew that there was something else. I had to move on. And it was only later, when I reflected back on that, many years later, that I realized what had happened. Because I love working at the bookstore. I could have done that for the rest of my life. I kept saying, I'll do this for the rest of my life. But I couldn't, because, you know, I had lost that contact with God, the doer. So I fell, you know. Devotees rise, devotees fall. So I took a little bit of a fall there. And, you know, that's what it's all about, isn't it? We learn and we grow. And so from that point, I had to learn how to pick myself back up in a spiritual way. And, you know, I had all sorts of help. I moved to the village, and I had all sorts of help. So it didn't last very long. But there were, of course, a lot of other things happening all at the same time. So that was just one of them. So now I take this and I keep it. So the thing is, you don't want to forget these moments. You know, have you all had these little, I see heads nodding when I'm talking about this stuff. You know, you've had these times when, yeah, that there's something happening. And, you know, I'm not in charge. And, you know, I want to follow that. And you have to keep that fresh, because it's easy to get clouded over with all the other activities of our life, the other demands of our life. But as the reading said, you know, these are what you put first. This is the most important thing that you put forward. I know when somebody asked, a devotee asked Swami Ananda, a long-time devotee, and she was torn about, you know, she just felt like she had just so many duties with her family that she just couldn't do everything. And, you know, she had to give her energy to her family. And Swami very strongly told her, she said, you have to put first your divine commitment, and all else has to be put on the back burner. You know, he wasn't being soft about it. He was laying it out there. You know, I know we're all busy. We all have all sorts of things, but yes, we have to commit to that time to meditate. We have to commit to working with ourselves in terms of, you know, giving it to God, trying to bring God into our life, doing the dishes, you know, and thank God for, gee, I've got these wonderful dishes to do, and I can, you know, I've got water, hot water, and, you know, all the little things. We can begin to do that every day. And so that we can put God first. And it doesn't have to be extra time consuming. Perhaps meditation can be a little bit, you just have to take a little out of your sleep. But you know, if you do really deep, it's better than sleep. So, you know, it's one of the, you have to judge for yourself. But consciously in your mind, always think, I'm putting God first. Because how do we lift our consciousness? Besides being in the presence of some great spiritual teacher like Swami Ananda, and there are a lot of stories around that. But we have to do it by two ways, meditation and service, right action. And those two ways have to go together. And you can't really have one without the other. And one of the things in the story, again, the Martha and Mary story, that it was when Martha was serving, I mean, service is good, isn't it? We all get to serve. Service is good, but she didn't have the right attitude. So it's called serving in the right attitude. So serving with an idea of doing it for God, serving with cheerfulness. I know sometimes it's kind of, you get grumbly, you know, we get so much, we do so much. I mean, we just do so much. It's like, but you know, the more you can say, okay, you know, this is my path right now, this is what I'm doing, do it with, be cheerful. give it to God and try to, in that way it becomes a useful tool for you. Otherwise, it's probably not that useful if you're doing it with the other attitude. There was another story this was in the New Path, and this isn't one that we know as much about, but when Swami Kriyananda was living at the Hermitage, or at Mount Washington with his guru, at one time he was a young monk, and the monks were working to put some pillars up, I guess, at the Encinitas Hermitage. And they were waiting at that particular time for the boss monk that really knew what was going on, I guess. And they were all gathered there to help erect these pillars. And Swami said they were just waiting, and they were waiting, and they were waiting, and Master came, and he was waiting and waiting. And, they said when Master came, it was easy to wait, but it was like, this monk's going to get in big trouble. He's making us all wait. Well, the monk finally did arrive many hours later, and Master said, well, where were you? And the man said, I was meditating very deeply, and I really didn't want to leave that state. And Yogananda said, very good, that's right. So, put God first. When you have those moments, I know maybe your boss at work wouldn't appreciate that kind of stuff, but you have to weigh the consequences. But if you really do this, it's worth it, isn't it? If you really are in that deep, deep state, it's worth it, no matter what happens later. So anyway, those types of things happen. So always saturate yourself with God-reminding activities. And for you, I don't know what that is, but one of them for me is walking in the woods, forest bathing, whatever you want to call it nowadays. It's, of course, music. And basically, once I heard Swami's music, I don't listen to anything else. There isn't anything else that is uplifting, even though I know there's some wonderful music out there. But it's my music, because this path is my path. So music, whatever works for you, things like that. Other people have other ways which are God reminding for you. So that it keeps our consciousness up, because we have to work at it, because it's always a pull downward. As you know, consciousness rises and consciousness falls, depending upon the state that we're in. So try to put yourself in a state that's up. I know I had an experience recently where I had my car serviced, and I bought my car up at Mount Vernon because I was living at the farm at the time. And so that was a dealer that, close by. And they're a very nice dealer, by the way. Anyway, I've been bringing my car up there for servicing, and well, this was one of these big services that's going to take 2 hours or more. And they couldn't very well bring me home or anything, so there I am. I was sitting in the waiting room, and it's not very uplifting, these great big televisions, these great big screens, and they've got all this stuff going on, and news, and anyway, it's just not something I enjoy being around. It was quite full. So I just went outdoors. And luckily, it's right near the Skagit River, and along the dikes, and I got up on the dike and I walked along the dike, and I got to sit and meditate by the river, and 2.5 hours later, my car was ready, and I was feeling great. If I had been sitting in that waiting room, I hate to think of what I would have been feeling like. Those little things, I took advantage of that opportunity. And it's all those little things that add up to the big thing, when those big moments come, and you know that God's presence is right there with you. I know Master tells me it's never too late. We were told the story that there was a woman when Master was lecturing all around the country, and he was in this area. There's an older woman, 80-year-old woman, who came to his lectures, and she'd never been on a spiritual path. She was just had her life, but she went to his lecture and became totally immersed in the teachings. She was so taken. And here she was, 80. She was starting the spiritual path at 80 years old. I mean, you know, you're never too late, but you know, you kind of got it up against you at that age. But for 3 years, she died 3 years later, they said, that she just immersed herself in the teachings. And Master said later, that woman found liberation in 3 years. So it's not too late. Anybody over 80? Maybe by 81 it's too late, I don't know. But I know someone here that's almost 80, it's not too late. So, you know, you just have to wherever you're at, you just take it and run with it. So to me, that's very encouraging that there is hope. Just make every minute count, because that's what it takes, is every minute. And I'll have this in my altar. I remind myself of that precious hour or two or whatever when I was in God's presence, so obviously to me. And just persist, keep at it. So I want to read from Whispers from Eternity. I had a hard time finding one because so many of these are pertinent, but this one kind of grabbed me this morning at about 4 o'clock when I woke up. So anyway, it's beautiful. Wrapped in the blanket of hope, I slept long. I dreamed I was sitting on a throne, my face wreathed in smiles. And the petals of my merriment dropped away one by one. Suddenly I beheld myself in rags. Seated on the hard stones of poverty, I wept, and my teardrops fell on the unheeding, unrelenting stones of my present circumstances. The world passed me by in mocking silence. I cried out for thy help, and thou didst wake me, at last, through the force of my desperation. I laughed to find myself, at last, neither rich nor poor, but safe forever in thy arms. Oh, awaken all anxious souls from their dreams of smiling opulence and crying poverty. O maker of dream worlds, deliver me forever from the nightmares of disease and death. Wake me to immortality. Wake me to unshaken calmness, that I may know the fierce terrors of mundane delusion to be only dreams. So let's take a moment now of silence.